right. Let's see. And actually, if you are the presenter, I think you can. You want to start with showing your screen or start broadcast. I'm sorry. I will do that.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Jeff Progulski from ABC Computers. I am here to introduce our presenter this morning, Matthew Patrick, who's coming to us from. Help me with that. Is that Avalara? Did I say that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, great. He's coming to us from Youngstown, Ohio, and he is, as you see by the title of this presentation, going to help answer some sales tax compliance questions. So you are all in listen-only mode. If you have a question, you can use the question pane to raise your hand. This presentation is being recorded so that anyone from your organization that wants to visit it later will be able to do so. So with that, Matthew, I'm handing over control to you.
Great. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to talk tax today. So what's the theme, right? Say goodbye to those frustrating sales and use tax compliance issues. How can technology help? Each time that I do these presentations, we hope to have a little bit of information for each party. So what do I mean by that? Some folks come into a presentation like this and they're completely new to sales tax, right? And someone asked them to, hey, you need to learn this and you're going to be our go-to guy, learn about sales tax and can we make it better? Or maybe they're in IT and they were asked to look at different projects from that perspective and what would impact their IT environment. Or it's someone really that has been doing the work for several years and just looking for tips and tricks of how to make their life easier. So we hope to hit each touch point on what kind of point of view you may be coming from today. So you kind of see a vast array of different pieces to the pie when it comes to compliance, right? So what do we plan to talk about? Just the overall challenge. Anytime you talk about tax, it's kind of good to talk about the backdrop, right? The market, what do we see out there? Are there tea leaves that we should be aware of if we're not already aware of that could impact our business as legislation changes in the future? What are the core components of compliance when it comes to sales tax, right? So what are the key areas that could open us up to exposure? That's certainly nexus, taxability, and really just your process around compliance overall. How accurate are you in doing it, managing exemption certificates, et cetera. So we'll kind of talk about each one of those points, and then we'll show you a little bit about what does Avalara look like within the NAV space. Specifically, how does it work within the customer card within NAV and its individual components. Let's go ahead and kind of talk a little bit about the challenge, right? When you think about the marketplace around sales tax compliance, a lot of states are being active. So what do I mean by that? Ohio, they added 30-some auditors. Indiana's going to hire, I want to say, 40 auditors. Wisconsin's hired some. California hired 100. The gig's up. I mean, basically, they're saying, you know what, we don't have enough money. We're going to go find more money. And one of the ways we want to do it is audit existing businesses that are out there and that we can get more of our fair share, right? Ohio's been pretty successful, really, overall. I think it was when Kasich came over, they had about a $5 billion deficit. Now it's $1.5 billion surplus. Now, certainly that has nothing or all to do with sales and use tax compliance, but they have raised rates and they have been more aggressive in the state. So other states are going to notice, and they're going to look to implement plans to certainly do the same, right? There's other legislation in the federal government. So for any of you that follow this kind of stuff, or for any of you that don't, last year there was a bill put in front of the Senate called the Marketplace Fairness Act. And in layman terms, you would hear from it in the media just really as the Internet Sales Tax Bill. But it's a little bit of a misconception. It's not really an Internet Sales Tax Bill. It's a remote sellers bill. And it has everything to do with what we'll talk about in a little bit, which is nexus. How to give the tools to the states to compel out-of-state businesses to register, collect, and file in their states. It passed the Senate. It went to the House. The House said not so fast. They came back with some feedback, and they're currently going back and forth on different options and ways they want to implement a bill like that. So it's important to keep an eye on those things because, a lot of businesses have remote sales outside of their home state. How would it impact you? What would your registration requirements be? What kind of tools would be available? So what are the basics, right? Do I have to collect? meaning do I have Nexus there? What do I have to collect for? What types of products and services are we selling? Who manages the taxability on that ongoing? And then how do we charge? And then certainly, do I need to register and remit into a new jurisdiction? What are the business activities? And this is a key point regardless of anything we covered today. If you don't review your business activities as it relates to creating Nexus or a reason to register in another state, you could really run into some pretty damaging situations. We got several examples here where customers reach out to us and we try to help them, or we put them in a professional services engagement. But once they get caught, it's just too late. There's less we can do from an audit defense standpoint to help them. So what does the state expect, right? And the list goes on. I feel like I could probably hit this button another 30 times. Let me go back. So calculations. Calculation isn't just as simple as, you know what, it's built to, shipped to, it's always destination-based, right? Ohio can be different than Tennessee. Now, Tennessee has single article tax. There's thresholds. You go out to California and you got a warehouse out in California, it really blows your mind because each transaction can be different depending on what warehouse it's coming from because of the way they source a transaction, how things are being shipped to the customer. Then, throughout the country, each jurisdiction has its own, city, county, special jurisdictional taxes. So just managing and maintaining that. How do you want to do it? Do you want to do it manually? If you're in one state and there's one rate, obviously, not a big deal. If you're in 10 states and you're in some of the more challenging states, this really can be a challenging thing to keep up to date. And it's just as much as a customer service issue as it is a compliance issue. Customers don't like to get the wrong rate at times, and they won't pay their bill. So depending on how high your invoice is, that can be a cash flow issue. Returns are simple, right? I mean, it's pretty much the same idea with like a payroll tax. If you got to do it, you got to do it, and someone has to do the work, right? So you can do the work yourself, go out and file those returns, or you can use a service like Avalara to do so. So what are businesses telling us? What are their main areas that they're looking for help? They are tired of managing tax schedules or rate content local to their NAV or other accounting system, right? They're tired of getting the wrong rates or applying rules or creating rules in their accounting system for the line item taxability, even just freight. It's the nuances from state to state and how they're taxed correctly. They're just tired of dealing with it. They're tired of dealing, if they're in several states, the actual manual work of filing the returns. If you're filing 500, 600, 800, 1,000, 2,000 returns, it's a sizable endeavor, and the folks doing the work aren't necessarily excited about it. So, anytime that they can outsource that part of the compliance piece, it just frees them up to do other things within the business. So let's talk about some of the core components of compliance. So again, this is kind of that area where, if you're coming from a background of, I've been doing this for 20 years, this is a lot of review for you. If you're new, pay attention to this area here, Nexus, because to me this is the biggest exposure area we see with companies that reach out to us and have significant liability issues. Nexus is just simply the legal term they use, governments use in the industry to indicate that there's a tangible physical presence that connects the business with the jurisdiction or the state, okay? And it means nothing else than you have to do what? You have to register. And once you register, then you got to file returns. And then once you're filing returns, guess what? Then you got income tax things to worry about, right? So you got to do business licenses. So, it's one of those things, not every company is going to go aggressively and register all over the place because there's a downside on the, when outside of even sales tax that you got to address as well. What are some things that we see that trip up customers that aren't aware they're creating Nexus? Traveling salespeople, certainly. Third-party agents, believe it or not, seem to get folks tripped up quite a bit. We see more and more companies with inventory being warehoused in states, especially if they're part of Amazon and an agreement with Amazon. Amazon, in one agreement, you will own the inventory in their warehouses, creating Nexus everywhere. And then in another agreement, you won't be really the owner. You'd be more of a drop shipper, and you won't have the Nexus issues. So, of course, training, trade shows, those are pretty standard stuff, but it's really the inventory I see oftentimes really gets a lot of folks. Now, what is this picture here? So if you look at, if you can find Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky, West Virginia, hey, we're blessed. It's pretty straightforward in terms of rates. But Ohio, you'll see all the different colors. Each one of these colors represent different taxing jurisdictions. So depending on where you have a requirement to register, it can make a significant difference on how complex even your rate maintenance is for your business. So one of the traditional ways that folks have really tried to attack rate determination is, because it just made sense at the time, let's attach a rate to a zip code, right, and use that. Well, that works for some parts of the country, but not all parts of the country. So what happens is when you're in that process and you're trying to pick one, it's going to give you 4 or 5 options, and you still got to pick the right option. Avalara is really taking an address and converting it to a GPS coordinate, so it really knows if it's on the south side of the street or the north side of the street and what the difference in tax is. So is this taxable in California or not? I would say probably. How about this? Uh-oh. Why is it different? It's downloaded. So, it's just a creative way to say, there's things that we buy every day that we don't even think about, right? That if you really pay attention, you can see differences in taxes. In fact, if there's anyone on the phone that's a big fan of Milky Ways, you may notice that the original is taxed one way and the dark chocolate bar is taxed differently, and it's all about flour, believe it or not. So the taxability can be tricky in certain industries. And so how do we deal with it, right? So if everything is taxable in the things that you have to deal with, it's much easier. But if you have to create special rules around the types of applications or services that you provide, these are common industries where you'll see a lot of variances from state to state. So I kind of referenced this a little bit earlier around who do I pay and how do we determine the correct amount of tax? And we were kind of talking about bill to, ship to, and warehouses, and customer out there in California with a warehouse versus just doing a transaction in Ohio. Is it an interstate transaction, an out-of-state transaction? States generally fall into one of these 3 buckets on how to determine the correct rates to apply to the transaction, and you have to make sure you have the right rules built in your accounting system without a tax engine doing it for you. So automation is like anything else, right? I mean, it all comes down to the big 4, why you would do it. Sales tax compliance is the same thing. Sales tax compliance in terms of our product, to me it's a successful company because they really are a vertical-based SaaS solution that solves a specific problem. And if you look in the marketplace of other solutions doing a similar thing, they're all growing and doing well because in their niche, it just makes, frankly, a lot of sense. Like, for example, in tax, when it comes to sales tax, why should I put current rates, historical rates, current taxability rules, historical taxability rules, current reporting, and former reporting rules, all local to the accounting system? It's not a great idea because it changes all the time. There's 11,000 different taxing jurisdictions. There's 100 and some thousand different taxability rules on products and services. They change from time to time, and no one really locally to the business wants to be an expert in compliance. So why not put all those rules in the cloud and have the technology in the cloud read the data it needs from the accounting system, the e-commerce system, a custom application, whatever it may be that the source of the transaction needs to be applied a tax decision on. Just give us the information, we'll make the decision and push it back into your system. So how does it work? Right, so it's oftentimes we get some questions around, is it secure? It's certainly absolutely secure. The data that gets sent from NAV gets packaged up and encrypted, goes through our firewall, pings our data center and back into NAV in about 0.4 of a second. So what that means is the installation within NAV is it's easier than traditional products related to sales tax because it's a light footprint that your partner merges code, and you just really merge around some of the modifications made in the areas around sales order and invoicing. So our product is really built into 3 components, right? There's calc, exemption certificates, and returns. Calc includes address validation on each transaction. It can also update NAV with that transaction. Sourcing rules, just like we were talking about before, what's the difference between California and Ohio? Applying that jurisdiction automatically, looking at the taxability on a line-by-line basis, and pushing it out to reporting. But as you know, if you're out there and you're really, hey, 90% or more of our business is non-tax, right? That's very common for customers we work with. So a lot of them, what their activity is collecting the right exemption certificate, because their challenge is they can have multiple people in their process trying to collect this information. And sometimes it's salespeople, and they don't know what they're looking for. I mean, they can look at a W-9 and go, yeah, that looks right. How about you push the order through this month, and we'll get that later, right? So it's a challenge to get the right information, store it, and then apply those rules to the correct tax decision at times within the accounting system. What this tool does is it provides you a mechanism to send a notice directly from NAV to your client. Within the email, there's a link. The link sends your customer out to a website. They answer a few questions. It puts them on the correct form. They put in their tax ID information. They sign it, and then accounting gets the process reviewed to really review the certificate and accept it. What's helpful about this, though, is for those customers, if you sell to a customer that's exempt in Ohio, but maybe they're not exempt in Tennessee and you have nexus in both states, it's going to know that automatically. You're not relying upon the user on the accounting side to really identify that as part of their process. Returns are returns, right? So if we're going to have the data in the tax engine in the cloud, why not put it into a format that's easy to reconcile back to NAV and provide you an opportunity to approve those numbers, and then we take one amount out of your account, go to the individual areas that we need to file the return, fill them out, remit payment individually to each jurisdiction, and then send you the audit trail back to as far as e-file authorizations and the actual returns. So what do some of the screens really look like within NAV and Avatax? To me, one of the bigger areas here, and this is just a screenshot, but if you bring your eyes down to the middle of the screen where it says tax area code and you see Avatax, this is really where you start to initiate the change, right? So instead of having a individual tax schedule there for a customer in Ohio, in Youngstown, Ohio, you would just change it to Avatax, and what that's telling the accounting system to do is to send the data behind the scenes for us to make the tax decision. Where are they located? What warehouse are we shipping this from? What items are we putting on the quote or the order, et cetera. So address validation. This is very helpful both in the accounting system itself, but also if you're out there and you're using Microsoft CRM. This is really helpful too to clean things up on the front end or the most front end part of the process and let it flow accurately down through the rest of your process. We do integrate with Microsoft CRM, and of course what we're looking at here is NAV. At the top of the screen, what you'll see is it's an address that we can update and really ping our service to apply. It looks like in this case it just added that this is 4th Street Southwest. But if I deleted the last 4 digits of the zip code, it would have found those additional zip code digits and applied those so that you have the most up-to-date mailing address. That's not necessarily how we look at it from a tax perspective. So we're still going to take that address, convert it to a GPS coordinate for a tax decision. But if you got to mail them something, that's the best tool to use for mail. So let's look at kind of a standard order, right? You got various different line items on the order, and it looks like this may be a little hard to see. I didn't realize how small I put this, but you hit the statistics button, or you can have it set up so that each time you close out of the order, it automatically pings. There's a variety of different ways you can have it to trigger tax. The bottom left-hand corner is really that statistics box, right? And it's showing the calculation per line item and the amount per jurisdiction below that. So a little bit about Avalara. We do, of course, do a lot of sales tax and use tax software. A lot of folks don't realize we're really building more and more of a professional service practice. It's your standard salt practice, very similar to a CPA firm. So we do everything from audit defense, nexus questionnaires, voluntary disclosure agreements if you found that you should have been collecting and filing an estate, and you want to be ahead of the game and try to reduce the penalties. We do things around 1099 processing, property taxes. I mean, there's a great deal of things that aren't even on this list, but we do have a pretty robust compliance team here at Avalara. So, and of course, in terms of endorsements, we have we're Microsoft certified for NAV. We are as well in GP and AX and several other areas of Microsoft. So I have Terry's contact information. Terry's a colleague of mine. Terry receives just the members from our seminar today, and he'll kind of go through and help answer any questions or get it over to me, and I'll do the same. So Jeff, I think we want to open the lines right now and just kind of go through any Q&A that may be out there.
Sure. Let's see. I will ask people to raise their hands if they've got a specific question. Sometimes the mass unmute will bring in a lot of background noise. There haven't.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the queue right now. I don't see any questions. Boy, I tell you, it was a learning experience for me. There is a lot of stuff involved with this tax compliance that I was unaware of. So I'm thinking maybe the lack of questions has to do with some maybe some other people feeling like I do, overwhelmed at the information presented, but certainly raises the stakes as to the importance of the service that you guys provide. So oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just to kind of leave you with this, right? So there's this in Oregon called Mattress World. And Mattress World, if you know about Oregon, they don't even have sales tax. So if you came in and talked to, we'll just call her Mary Jo, whoever the owner was, are you looking around sales tax compliance? She'd go, are you nuts? We don't even charge tax here. We sell mattresses. Get out. It's not a big deal. Well, she has 7 or 8 stores, and the stores that are near the border, people from the state of Washington drive over to Oregon to buy mattresses, so they don't have to pay tax on a $1,200 or $2,000 purchase.
Sure.
And so it goes on and on and on and on, and next thing you know, one afternoon, wouldn't a state auditor from Washington just go with his wife, go buy a mattress, and get to the checkout and go, they're not charging me tax, because he's the only one that would actually notice this, in that perspective. And then you ask the question, well, how do you plan to get this to my house, because I'm not strapping this on my car? And they say, well, we got a third-party trucking company that will get it there next Wednesday. Okay, so what does he do? On Monday, he goes into work, he sees if they're registered in the state of Washington. They're not. He sends out the audit notice. Turns out she had to pay sales tax back to Washington from 2002 to 2009, and it came to $2.1 million. That's a lot of mattresses. So naturally, she had to go on a payment plan. Next thing you know, he had to close the doors to her business. And the worst part of it all is it still said you still owe us the tax, personally. It's crazy.
Of course. Well, yeah, that, nothing gets the point, drives the point home, I guess, like a story when you get the tax authorities knocking on your door personally asking you for the taxes you incorrectly or never collected. So, all right, great. Well, again, I thank you for providing this presentation. I learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone on the line did. We will send out a follow-up email that contains a link to the recorded webinar for any of you that want to share this with anyone else within your organization. And hearing no other questions, I guess thank you, Matthew, for your time. And everyone, thank you for attending.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Thanks, everyone. Take care now.